And welcome to another edition of Coffee with Graeme on Amateur Sports TV. I'm your host, Graeme Forsyth. It's our Week 5 coverage of the MFHL U18 AAA season for 2020-2021 here on the network. And if you guys missed it, last Friday, October 30th, Dr. Brent Rusin and the provincial Manitoba government announced that Winnipeg, the health region here, is going into code red after it was reported last Friday that we had 309 new cases. In Manitoba as a whole, last Friday it was reported that we had 480 new cases, and that means that the MFHL U18 AAA season is on hold for the next 2 weeks. They're hoping it's only for the next 2 weeks because with two Winnipeg teams in the league, you really can't have those teams traveling, so the league decided to shut down, and they decided to shut down before these restrictions were put into place, which was on November 2nd, and for the league, they shut down on Friday, October 30th, when the announcements were made. So no new games, no new scores to report in this past week. We were going to have a great lineup of guests this week, but unfortunately we weren't able to do that. We only have one guest joining us today. We'll get to that in just a moment, but we're going to be showing you guys an update of the standings in the league through the first month, which was October, and these are where these teams lie. As when they do return to play, these are where these teams sit. And these standings with Coffee with Graeme are brought to you by Pure Nata, natural beauty made in Canada. Here are the standings after the first month of play in the MFHL. After the month of October, the Avros sit in first place. They've played the most games in the league so far, but they've taken full advantage of those games up to this point. Other than that, the Chiefs, the Ice, and the Wildcats are all neck and neck with each other. The Hawks and the Capitals are tied for 5th, but the Caps could potentially be higher in the standings since they've only played 3 games to this point. The Selects were only able to get 1 win in the month of October, and the Lightning are winless coming into November. Now, a side note, in the interview today with League President Brad Kirk, I say 13 games are postponed on the schedule, which they are according to the website. I was going off the confirmed games on the MFHL website. We will keep you all posted in the next few days if this number is the exact number of games that are going to be postponed, or if there's more games that are going to be postponed. And League President Brad Kirk joins me on this week's episode of MFHL season coverage. And Brad, in the interview I did with him, it was yesterday on Wednesday, he was fairly optimistic about the league coming back. I'm not sure if his optimism is kind of changed in the past 24 hours after I got to see the cases from yesterday. We had 374 new cases in Manitoba yesterday, 276 in Winnipeg alone, so that's not a good sign. We were trending in the right direction, but there's a little bump in the road now. Hopefully that's just a little hiccup in the plan to us getting back to Winnipeg being in code orange and seeing a return to play in the MFHL in these next 2 weeks. But in the interview, Brad was optimistic about their chances of coming back in the next 2 weeks. I had a chance to speak to Brad about what he's been doing in the past week to talk to teams and really getting them on the same page about them returning to play for the November 15th date like they said on the website. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Brad Kirk, MFHL President, to this edition of Coffee with Graeme MFHL season coverage. Ever since the announcement has been made, it was made on Friday, October 30th, that you guys are deciding to shut down. Have you been able to talk to teams during this time from now to then?
Yeah, so we have as an exec, and I've had a few one-on-one conversations with different teams on more through email than anything else, but a couple of phone calls on just sort of what our approach is, and and really the decision around Friday of basically suspending play as of Friday. I know it was technically, the health order didn't kick in until Monday, and but I think in the best interest of all our players and the families involved and the coaching staff, that we made a call to just suspend operations starting on Friday. And so it wasn't an easy decision, but I think the decision to suspend wasn't going to change. It's just a matter of when did you make it effective.
Yeah, and for sure, and it's such a big factor, I think, into getting this virus under control is being proactive, and it seems like you guys have taken the right steps to be proactive throughout this process. But just getting into the meetings with teams, how have those meetings gone so far?
I think in our conversations, I think where it gets to is, some teams have greater restrictions. So, for example, the two Winnipeg teams, it's fairly clear what's involved. Now we're at the stage of the nuances of the health order and really out with the teams as to how are you impacted. So, for example, the Eastman team of the 17 skaters they had, 10, I believe it's 10 skaters. One assistant coach and a safety are living within a red zone, and so therefore you're losing half of your team. And I think Pembina Valley probably had a few. I think they had 3 players. Interlake, I'm not too sure their numbers, and then Central Plains also had some impact. So even though their teams may be able to operate, their rosters are cut down because of, and I think that's part of it. As you go through this, you continually go through and you get new information. You got to be responsive to that new information and get stuff out to your team. So I think in that we really went out to the teams to say how many. That was a nuance that we hadn't thought of. Right, you'd think that an entire health region would be okay, but when they layered on, okay, well, Southern Health is okay except for these particular jurisdictions, and because so many of our players, at least from the Eastman area, are from Springfield, from Reshot, from Niverville, Taché, they get directly impacted. And Eastman as an example.
Yeah, and I didn't even think of that. I mean, it makes sense because it all depends on where these players and coaches live. So that's such a big thing to take into consideration for sure. And just talking about the schedule, because there's postponed games for the next 2 weeks here, at least, depending if things go exactly the right way. But 13 games right now are postponed at the moment. Is there a plan in place to maybe replay these games, maybe play these games and reschedule them, or is it going to be shortening the schedule maybe?
Yeah, good question. I think we have a couple of options for us. One is that I know there still is on the books a sort of a showcase event that's planned for early December in Portage. And so that is run typically by a fellow who's a great advocate of our league, Ferdy Nelson, and does an amazing job promoting our league on a whole bunch of things. And that's one of the events that he runs. He may look to actually include league games, right? So if you're playing a team that you didn't play before, maybe you could incorporate that particular game as a league game for it. The other option is, historically, we've always ended the season around February 13th, February 14th. And it's kind of a work back from when SO Cup happens, SO Cup Westerns and playoffs and that kind of stuff. There's almost a feeling out there that we don't know whether SO Cup is going to happen this year. And so, nobody's made a call on that. It's more, around the water cooler kind of talk on things that it's hard pressed to see that happening. So for us, there's no magic to having to end on February 14th. If you're not going towards an SO Cup and making sure you're done at a certain time, there's no reason why we could not tack another 2 weeks to the end of our season and be able to get that in. The other option is always a sort of a third option, is if you couldn't get all those games back in. And I think all the teams in our earlier conversations this summer recognize that if you can't get your full 28 games in, having some sort of a prorated approach to your win-loss record and the points is not a bad. You know what? Every team is willing to be flexible, and that may be one way to do the rankings if you can't get to the full 28. If let's say you're at 27 or 26, our plan is to try to reschedule these, but not to try to fit it in between now and February 13th. Let's try to maybe extend things if we can. So.
Yeah. And I mean, have you guys been able to talk to any health officials during this time and really get information from them about how you guys are going to approach the rest of this season and the rest of this time and the period of the postponement of the season?
No, I haven't yet. I mean, maybe the teams have directly with their own health areas, but I think the guidance that they've got. So Eastman, I'll use that as an example. Is they've gone through and Eastman has come over the top and said, "Listen, you're not playing at all," and so for 2 weeks period, it's almost they're the same as Winnipeg because they've had so many impacts, and so they've just gone and suspended their own operations. And that was a region decision. And I don't think Interlake, I don't think any of the other regions have taken that same approach, but because there's so many players impacted, that's the approach it is. So, I think the guidance is really from, what's coming out from the health order. I think it was, a great bit of information that came out from Hockey Manitoba and Hockey Winnipeg on sort of their approach to their players and sort of taking that as guidance as well. And so that we continue to evolve our particular approach. I think the health orders, when they come out, they have enough information to work with, and the facilities and little things like, hey, 25% is what you're allowed in those particular rinks. So I think, and some of our teams, so for example, Yellowhead and Westman, I mean, I think they, at the start of their season, I'm trying to remember when they came out of the orange. It might have been during their tryouts in September, and maybe the start of that they were sort of in that orange environment at that point in time. So this isn't new to them as to how they can actually operate. What's different is the fact that there was games on the line, and they're not playing games at this moment. So
yeah. And something that I saw, I was looking at Central Plains website, and I saw that they played a game on November 1st against Pilot Mound. And I mean, for teams that are affected, like Eastman, that just decided to shut down their team operations for now, and teams like that don't want to go to play. I mean, like Winnipeg, both Winnipeg teams can't play right now, but the teams that are able to play, are you guys you're allowing them to go out and play in non-league competition games right now?
Yeah. So we will allow teams and to go out, and we're about to issue our formal communication to that, because we've had a few questions on that. Is to say, listen, so I'm some of the teams where I'm still operating. We've got, and it's pretty limited as to who is actually, who could be your competition, and but at least have some games if they, and again, it's going to be a team question. There may be some teams, the coaching staff, the parents, and the players that don't want to have any games. And there's nobody's forcing anyone to have any sort of exhibition games in this period. But if they feel comfortable, if they have enough of the protective measures within their facilities and within their teams to manage it, we would allow them to have those exhibition games. Again, it's going to be pretty limited. Pilot Mound is probably the only prep program that you're going to be able to play that would be allowed, right? It's outside of, it's fully in the orange area. Much like Yellowhead and Westman and most of Pembina Valley and Central Plains and that. So,
and just in terms of spectators, I mean, in the orange zone, I mean, the rink got reduced to 25%, as you did say before we even went on air, and you said before in this interview. But are you guys going to kind of take matters into your own hands and limit the spectators, even when you guys do get back in the, Winnipeg being in the orange zone, and then things kind of do get back to kind of the way they were before we went into another shutdown of the league postponement?
Yeah, I think where we've, what we've started through the whole month of October is we really left it to those facilities and the teams, and the limits that they had, which tended to be around 2 spectators per player, and is really what it averaged. Like, I know they would say 50% capacity. Some facilities, as are much bigger than others. And so I think what most teams ended up having is just 2 spectators per team. And so now that might go down to 1. As a league, we wouldn't dictate that. We would leave that up to, the individual facilities, because we don't want to, come in over the top and say, you have to do, because we're basically probably going to say the same thing as what the facility has. However, if the facility says no spectators or the team says no spectators, we would be fully supportive of that.
Yeah, so it's really up to the rinks as a whole instead of you guys really dictating it.
Yeah, there's so many different the setups for every rink. It's completely different.
Yeah,
Like little things when we're going through the whole exercise and getting the information, and for us it was really around communication, and team sharing. Okay, if I'm a team coming in, when can I go to the rink? When can I go in there to dress? Where can I go and have my team go and warm up? And that. So, we did make up a little schedule that tried to outline, have some basic information on each of those, but it really was up to the communication between the coaching staff to learn, where things are at, and to say, where can we do our warm-ups, and that sort of, order of, operations when it comes to games.
yeah. And so now we're going to move into just league play this season so far, moving away from these restrictions, because I'm not going to lie, Brad, it is a bit depressing just talking about these league restrictions and stuff like this. So we're going to talk about the action that's kind of transpired this season so far, just the standings so far. I mean, we got the Winnipeg Avros as the first place team. They're up by a fair amount of points right now, 6 points up on Yellowhead, but they've played the most games out of anyone in the league. But just talking about getting back to the Avros in just a moment, but a team, in your opinion, from what you've seen on the scoreboard and the stat sheet, that has surprised you the most so far this season?
You know what? I would say Yellowhead is one that I think has surprised me. I mean, they always have a great program every single year, and I think they've got a really good team coming in. I mean, part of it is like going through these restrictions. I haven't even been able to attend a game yet. You can watch them online, but I'm not a parent. So I can't go to a game yet, and those are the ones that you really miss getting into the details. So you're going off the scores and the scoreboard, but I think Yellowhead has been a nice surprise, but it's always up there. Westmen is another team, always up there. Great coaching staff, great program, long-term program. I mean, all of our programs are long-term. And that. So so those two are out there always fighting for the top. I think you're right. When it comes to the Avros, they've played more games. They've had that opportunity to have a few more. So some of the teams haven't played enough yet, and so it's hard to make a base. And they haven't even played all the other teams yet. So it's hard to make a judgment when you don't see them playing, at least having one game against all their competition. So.
Just talking about a team like Pembina Valley, who's coming in with 11 returning players. They get their a senior goaltender back in Regan Duran, and they didn't have the best start, but that's due to the lack of preseason games that the majority of these teams had, and they're finally starting to turn the corner a bit, and they came off a big win against the Winnipeg Ice on that Sunday matchup, the week that they played them on that Sunday. But do you think that this Pembina Valley Hawks team, come playoff time later on in the season, if they could put it all together from what you've seen in the past from this team, I mean, with 11 returning players, could maybe be a team that could upset teams in the playoffs?
Yeah, they're always been. I mean, Pembina Valley has always had a strong program, right? They're one of the few that, for many years that was the team. If you ever look at the trophy of the league winners, I mean, they consistently showed sort of a powerhouse, and and like every teams, they ebb and flow, and this is now they're starting their comeback, right? They've got some, like you said, some veterans that are on the team. They'll continue to improve, and they could. You know what? They've got great coaching staff, and consistent coaching staff. So, and staff that's been around for a while, and they've seen it all. So when you get that kind of thing, they've got the right mix that can go through, and you get enough games under their belt, they will start to turn around, and you're going to get the games like the Ice, where their coaching staff was probably couldn't be more than happy with some of the action from the players on their team, and they have a glimmer of what this team what their team could be, and so I think it's just a matter of getting more games, getting in there, and getting that consistency, and starting to play. Once you get a couple months under your belt, and sort of post Christmas and that, then assuming we get back on the ice in a little over a week or so, then yeah, I think it's a team that definitely is always in the running for some upsets in playoffs.
Yeah, and just moving on to the Winnipeg Avros, I mean, talking about how they played 8 games so far, the most out of any other team, and they were set to play the most games out of any team in the month of October, obviously not being able to play that final game against the Ice due to the cancellation of the league. But this Avros team, coming off a year where they had arguably, if not, I think it was their best year on paper in franchise history. They lost a bunch of players due to graduating out of the program. But this team comes in with 8 returning players. They add a bunch of 15-year-olds up front. They only had 3 returning forwards up front, and these forwards could play like Courtney Bays, Trinity Grove, Nora Collins, and then you have that experienced back end, and they only added 1 new player, and they came in with 2 rookie goaltenders. So losing 2 goaltenders due to graduating out of the program is a huge blow. But this team has really, stepped it up this year and showed teams that this is arguably, if not the best team in the league so far. And even though they haven't played a full 60 minutes, they've found a way to win in every game. So how surprised have you been so far with this Winnipeg Avros team and how they've fared so far with all the new players that they've brought into this program this season?
Yeah. I a little bit surprised. I think I didn't think they would have this kind of a jump, because when you lose that many players, that many strong players at the beginning with, and nothing against the ones that are still there. They had an entire, the third year to the first year freshmen, I guess, were all an incredible group last year. But when you lose that sort of experience that's been there, it's normally is a building season. And so I think it shows you the depths of some of the picks they've had when they sort of go through their draft with the Ice, and they get those players, the depth of what they had, that even though you lose that many individuals, you still have enough of a core of quality and experience in that you can still come up and deliver. And so Ashley is a wonderful coach. So she's, she'll bring the best out of every player. Doesn't matter if she's worked with them for 3 years or this is the first year she's had a chance to work with them. And again, I think it's sort of showing in their success so far.
The way things are going right now, it seems like you're optimistic about the league returning to play in the next week or so. You think that the league is on track to be returning to play, and they're set to return to play in the amount of time that you guys are envisioning it revised before the November 15th date?
Yeah, I think I am optimistic. I think what'll dictate is basically things that we can't control. And so if there's an element of they continue to have certain areas in a red zone, there's nothing we can do about that. And but what we do plan on having something next week is to, as we get closer and we kind of see, and maybe folks around the table have that sort of comfort as to whether we'll be able to open up again, is do we do some sort of a modify things a little bit, within our schedule. But I think we can't really make that call right now. But we would like to, I am optimistic that we'll at least move everybody into an orange status. And that's something that we can live with, right? Teams can operate under that kind of a status instead of an outright restriction. So I think time will tell. But I have to be optimistic. It's all about getting these girls to play and having that opportunity. First is their health and welfare, but and we'll take direction from Hockey Manitoba and the Provincial Health Authority and what we can do, and we'll work within those guidelines.
And welcome back to the show. Before we end off today's coverage of Coffee with Graeme, I just got to let you know about the other great shows we got on the network tonight. We got a jam-packed schedule, a triple header, back to back to back. It starts at 7 p.m. with Theo Tuckalek's show on the ice. That's at 7 p.m. as mentioned before. And then at 8 p.m. we got the Sask Sports Show hosted by JD Hodden. And then to end off the night of coverage on Amateur Sports TV. We got some pro sports coverage for you guys. Crunch Time with the Boys at 9 p.m. You can find those shows on YouTube, Facebook. For Crunch Time, we got it on YouTube, Facebook, and Periscope as well. So if you want to check those out, check them out at those social media platforms at Amateur Sports TV. And then this Saturday, we got Coach's Parlay with Theo Takalek. Be sure to check that out on YouTube and Facebook at Amateur Sports TV as well. And then if you want to stay up to date with when our shows are coming out on the network, because it's not just those shows that come out on Amateur Sports TV. We got a lineup of plenty of shows for you guys. I'm not going to name them all. You got to find out what they are for yourself. Stay tuned for them on Instagram and Twitter. You can also stay up to date with our shows on Facebook as well at Amateur Sports TV. So that's going to do it for today's edition of Coffee with Graeme. I've been your host, Graeme Forsyth, signing off. I salute to you now. I'll see you next time. Stay safe out there. Enjoy your weekend. Have a good one.